Well, an unusual break from August recess. U.S. senators returned to work today to pass a $600 million border bill. We're talking 1,500 new border personnel, military-style bases along the border, and even a pair of unmanned drones to try to prevent illegal immigrants from crossing over. This measure will be paid for by increasing fees on foreign companies that use low-cost labor from other countries. This is a massive bill with potentially massive implications. And here to talk about that is Gochez, community organizer and immigrant activist. Hey there, Ron. Just a few senators actually needed to pass this bill because it had so much support on both sides. And from what I understand, the president will sign this. He'll sign this bill coming up. You know, many immigration rights activists calling for reform. This certainly is something, right?
Absolutely. I think they proved that immigration reform can actually be passed through the Congress, and it passed in just 2 days. So it can be done. Unfortunately for our community, this is nothing more than more attacks on our community. And you know, it's whether it's the Republicans attacking us now, we have a House that's controlled by the Democrats, and we're still having these attacks coming down on us. So we wanted immigration reform, but this is definitely not what we were expecting.
So paint me a little picture here. What's missing from what happened today?
Okay, well, I mean, the only thing that happened today is that they're beefing up enforcement. It'll be 1,500 more agents on the field. There'll be, you know, all kinds of new surveillance equipment. So basically what's happening is that the Bush policies of 2000 through 2008 are basically now being continued and are much more efficient under the Obama administration. We see that in 2008, the U.S. government was spending $8 billion on border enforcement. This year, it's $10 billion. Now, today, it's $600 million more. So when we're talking about America possibly going bankrupt, I think the American public needs to see this as an issue. It's an economic issue as well, where they're dumping money on the border, and we're seeing that it's obviously not working. There's more drugs crossing the border. The whole thing with the whole violence around the drug deals happening, there's no way to stop that. And just dumping more money on the problem is not the solution. The real solution is immigration reform that will legalize people so they can work here legally.
You know, I do have to point out, though, they did say that they're not just passing, you know, more spending. They actually have a way that they want to pay for this by raising fees on companies that do hire cheap labor from other countries. I want to switch gears now. You were talking about old policies, Bush policies. There is a new discussion that's come up in recent weeks. A new aspect or talking point has been thrown into the pot here, and that is the repeal of the 14th Amendment. Now, as you know, the 14th Amendment put into place back in 1868 and basically says if you're born in the United States, well, then you're a United States citizen. This was part of Reconstruction, but many people are now saying babies born to immigrants who are in this country illegally should not automatically be granted citizenship. I want to hear your thoughts on this discussion.
Yeah, you know, initially this was meant to guarantee that African people born in this country would be considered citizens. And it's really sad that now, today, this country is taking a huge step backwards, at least the people who are bringing this up, and trying to attack the most vulnerable of our population, that's children. Trying to say that the children of people who are undocumented would also be considered undocumented. I mean, how far back does this trace? Because if we're looking at it that way, then the only people who can claim right to this land and to be the true citizens would be the indigenous people. So this is something that's really, really sad. I think the American public sees this as an insult, and it gives a black eye to the nation in the eyes of the world. And I think that although we don't know if this is going to happen, just the fact that we're talking about this talks about the current political climate, that it's totally open game to attack immigrants, not only on the streets, but also now even talking about changing the 14th Amendment as another way to attack our community.
Let's move on to the political implications here. I mean, in 2008, we saw plenty of Hispanics come out to vote for President Obama with the hope that comprehensive immigration would be passed. Now, under Obama, it's been shown more illegal immigrants are being deported than under Bush. Talk about what this could mean in future elections.
You know, it's very interesting. A couple of days ago, Senate Majority Leader Reid out of Nevada said that he had no idea how any Hispanics could be Republicans. And while I totally agree with him, I would also have to say that the real question is, I don't know how any self-respecting Latinos or whatever, Hispanics, whatever they want to call themselves, could be Democrats either, because we're seeing that both parties are the ones that are attacking our community. What's happening today with the $600 million more to attack our communities, this is not being done by Bush. It's not being done primarily by the Republicans. It's being done mainly by the Democrats. So
I mean,
whether it's Republicans like...
Will there be, like, 2 years from now? I mean, I can't imagine the majority of Hispanics coming out to vote for the Republican candidate, but if they don't vote for an Obama, they shouldn't stay home. So what do they choose? Do they choose a third party? Does a leader rise up out of this?
Yeah, that's what we're saying. We need a party that will represent our interests, and as of this point, it cannot be the Republicans or the Democrats. So we're saying at a local level, people need to organize themselves in their communities to, if it's a third party, so be it. But at this point, we have no business voting for either Republicans or Democrats, because we're seeing that both parties are attacking us. So I'm not calling for a boycott of the elections, but what we are saying is that right now, when you talk about the Republicans or the Democrats, you're really telling our community, pick your poison. So
many angles to this debate, Ron. And when we talk about immigration, we often talk about illegally crossing the border. But there is a legal way to come to this country. I'm talking about the provision that allows for asylum. If an individual can prove that returning to his or her homeland could lead to rape, torture, or persecution. Well, we've seen that recently some have taken advantage of this. And I want to show you this report and then get your reaction. Here now is RT's Dina Gochez.
When it comes to immigration issues in the United States, these are the pictures we've become accustomed to. But this kind of immigration story...
We are here today to announce the indictment in an enormous asylum fraud case in which 6 defendants filed 380 fraudulent asylum applications over the course of 4 years.
Is sometimes overlooked.
The lead defendant is 33-year-old David Lynn. Lynn's 5 defendants all had roles in his organization: translator, bodyguard, assistant, driver.
Lynn's driver, 56-year-old Akbar Kadyrov, was represented by this man, attorney Jeff Miller.
And what Lynn did was he sat down and counseled these people, pretending to be an attorney, charging the families about $7,500 for the whole family, and counseled them to furnish false information to the government or embellish information that would qualify them for political asylum.
35-year-old Lynn is in jail now, leaving behind hundreds of thousands of dollars that were found here, in his home. In this quiet neighborhood in the suburbs of Philadelphia lived a man who ran the biggest immigration fraud scheme this town had ever seen, making it even harder for those who hoped for political asylum to actually seek it.
The real harm here is, look at 380 applications that are clogging up the system.
And when a system is clogged, immigration officials have to be even more careful and skeptical about the claims they receive.
We have an entire fraud detection and national security division that works on those types of cases. So as far as making sure that the immigration benefit goes to the right person, we're always on the lookout to make sure that we do not provide a benefit to somebody who should not receive the benefit.
Right behind me is the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services headquarters here in Washington, D.C. Now, we weren't allowed access inside because of the sensitive nature of the proceedings, where hundreds of folks are seeking political asylum. But the way the system is set up, is it becoming all too easy to take advantage of it?
In this country, you have things like Social Security, Medicaid, Medicare. You have programs that help people, educational programs, and one of the programs you have is a political asylum program. Those kinds of programs are vulnerable to people that want to take advantage of it. Because if you make false claims to the government, made up claims, you get a major benefit.
A benefit that comes with risks. And a hope that's sometimes shattered when reality sets in. For RT, Dina Gochez.
So an entire business here being made on trying to get people who want to come into this country to come in through asylum. Somewhat interesting, Mr. Gochez. I want to get your thoughts on this.
Well, I would say that this represents a tiny fraction of the 12 million people who are undocumented in this country. So, I mean, while a few might take this road, the truth is that the real solution to this entire problem, so people don't have to do, any kind of fraudulent activity, would be an immigration reform that would provide full legalization for the majority of the working people. And obviously people won't have to resort to this type of thing. But what I do want to say is that there are thousands of people who do qualify for political asylum because of the fact that they do face political persecution in their own home countries because of their different activities, whether it be political, religious, or whatnot. So,
and I want to pull out actually
anybody who tries to get political asylum to come into this country, but at the same time, the real solution to this entire problem is a real immigration reform.
I want to also, just along those lines, Ron, point out some numbers here. We have some figures of political asylum claims filed, and at the top of the list is China. And second is Mexico, then Haiti, then Ethiopia. So again, China, then Mexico for asylum applications filed. Moving on, as far as applications that are actually granted, China's still on the top. Nowhere on the top of the list, nowhere in the top 6 is Mexico. I want to get your thoughts on that.
Well, I think it goes to show the political climate now where obviously the majority of migrants coming to this country are Mexican. And no one can deny what's happening in Mexico, whether it's political persecution of activists in Mexico who are struggling against a very corrupt Mexican government, or, of course, all the violence that's happening because of the drug trade and the narco drug trade. So, I mean, people are trying to flee for their lives. So the reality is that people, for one way or another, or the political terrorism that people are facing and the economic terrorism, the fact that people are just flat broke because of U.S. policy over decades in Mexico. So people are trying to leave, and asylum is in one of those ways. But like I said, you know, the only true solution is immigration reform.
And I want to just tie this back to everything that's gone on today here in Washington, this $600 million bill that was passed by, you know, a great majority of U.S. senators. It's hard to get them to agree on really anything. Is this, you know, we hear people calling this militarization of the border, these military bases, these drones. Would you agree with that assessment?
Absolutely. We see the most technological, the most militarized border on earth right now might be the U.S.-Mexican border, where right now we have at least during the summertime, on average, at least 2 people a day that are dying at that border. So up to date, we're almost at 10,000 people in the last 15 years that are dying. So in any part of the world, we have 15,000 casualties. That would be called a war. So we see that as militarism. We see that as a war against our community. And at that border, it's not just Mexican people. We have Chinese migrants. We have Brazilians. We have people from all over the world. So it's a human rights crisis at the border, and it needs to be solved. And the $600 million more, that is not the solution. I can guarantee you people will keep flowing across the border. Drugs will keep flowing across the border. That is not a solution. It's thrown away the American taxpayers' dollars.
10 seconds or less, what you would have liked to see be put in this bill that was passed today?
Sure. What we need is full legalization for our community. We don't need a guest worker program that's going to be something like the Bracero program of yesteryear. We don't need something that's going to exploit people. We need something that will legalize the people who are here working, and that will allow, it's a process that people can legally work here, live here, and not be terrorized by ICE, sheriffs, police departments.
All right. We're going to have to cut you off there. Community organizer and immigration rights activist Ron Gochez.